Hi, everyone, and welcome to Tales to the Cocktail 2022. It's a great honor to welcome you to today's business session called Big Little Brands, Corporate Learnings for Small Businesses. My name is Lauren Moat. I am the moderator today for the session, and I am also the Global On-Trade Excellence Programming Manager for Patron Tequila and one of the founding partners of Bittered Sling Bitters, which is celebrating 10 years this year. Today's session aims to celebrate what four of my additional panelists, their businesses, all of the learnings that they've had by working with, working for, and in support of larger brands that have helped their small brands to come to life. Each of us will have a different story to share, from sustainable business practices to developing on and off trade key business programming to developing RTDs and staying on strategy. This has been a really amazing program to put together and really hones in on each of our different ways of working, the different programming ideas that were helped to shape by some of our learnings and our MBA by osmosis by working with some really big and wonderful brands, and also where our little brands are going for the future. All right, welcome everybody. It's so great to be back, part of Tales again for another year. And this year we are zooming in live from different parts of the world, and very excited for today's topic called Big Little Brands, Corporate Learnings for Small Businesses. Now, before we jump right in, a little bit of background on today's session. So Corporate Learnings for Small Businesses focuses on 5 individuals and case studies on folks that have worked for quite big brands in the past or done work with brands in their bars, using the lessons and education throughout the years to develop their own businesses and brand plans to create dynamic marketing and PR opportunities, streamlining operations and supply processes while developing new products and innovating before, during, and after the pandemic. No small feat. I'm very happy that I'm one of the case studies and one of the presenters as well as the moderator. But on today's panel, we should talk about the most amazing people. So I'm Lauren Moat, I'll be your moderator. And we also have with us April Wachtel from New York, who owns a great company called Cheeky Cocktails, which we'll show you on the next slide. We also have Dino Moncrief coming to us live from London with his beautiful bars, Hatcha and brands Mirror Margarita. We have Amanda Victoria also in New York, who is in the business of promoting bees, sustainability, American whiskey, and delicious canned cocktails, proudly made in New York. So that's Amanda Victoria. And we have Dave Mulligan, who is coming to us live today from Dublin, Ireland. He's got a bar, he's got an RTD brand, he's got a little container that he transformed into a bar that he does events with. He's basically just doing all the things. Here are our brands that we're going to be chatting about today. So we have Cheeky, Mirror Margarita, Sippany, Irish Craft Cocktails, and Bittered Sling. So before we jump right in, I just wanted to open it up to our amazing panelists just to say hello. You can speak all at the same time if you want. Just a quick nudge to our amazing audience for tuning in, and a big thank you to Tales. Off you go.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hey
Thanks,
guys.
everyone. Over there.
Greetings from London.
Lauren. Amazing. Okay, we are going to kick off right away. So this is a big and robust session. We each of us will have like a quick and snappy 10-minute presentation. And so if I keep jumping in and saying, hey guys, we need to make sure that we are setting our timers, it's because legit we need to set our timers. Otherwise this will be, well, it would be a 3-hour session, but Tales would just end the session for us when it gets to a certain time. So we're not going to do that. So before I pass to our first presenter on Big Little Brands, small corporate learnings for small businesses, I'm going to pass it to April and ask her to start her timer now.
All righty. Thank you so much, Lauren. Thank you, Tales, for having us, and thanks to all the other panelists for being here. So my name is April Wachtel. I'm founder and CEO of Cheeky. It's a line of bar quality syrups and juices for the home and bar. Next slide, Lauren. That's me. Hopefully looking a little bit cheeky here. So just a bit about my background. I've been in food, beverage, hospitality for 25 years. Came up through bars and restaurants, became a cocktail instructor, taught at 5 different schools over 6 years, was a brand ambassador of Bacardi Rum, responsible for the rum portfolio in New York, but traveling nationally. And I was also a consultant for Diageo. So this was in the on-premise for 5 years in the US. And I worked with field teams, I worked with execs on the strategic portion of this, worked with agencies to launch these programs nationally as well. And all of this experience really informed what I've built into Cheeky. The insights, of course, understanding about the market dynamics, and is also informing the presentation I'm doing today. Next slide, please. Great. So these are obviously my products, as I mentioned, bar quality syrups for the bartender in the home and in the bar. And about half of our SKUs are exact replicas of syrups and juices found behind craft cocktail bars globally. So we're talking simple syrup, lemon juice, lime juice, ginger syrup, things of that nature. And then the other half are thoughtful solutions to like cocktail problems, if there were such a thing, but like a honey ginger syrup for the penicillin, espresso syrup for the espresso martini, and so on. Next slide, please. My portion of the seminar today is called Know Thy Strength. I think this was one of the biggest learnings that I had in my entire time in corporate beverage alcohol. And so I'm hoping to share this with you guys, hopefully to encourage you to follow your dreams, to lean into your skills, and potentially inspire you to start your own businesses as well. Next slide. So we all know the story of David and Goliath. All this is here to say is that David and Goliath have different strengths. They have different weaknesses. And if I'm going to give you a single message here, it's lean into your strengths. You can hire around your weaknesses, but lean into your strengths, lean into things that you can control and skills that you can develop. And I would bet that not only does everybody on this panel have a host of skills that they have cultivated and built in the industry, but infinite things that they've accumulated along the way that they've just been able to build on. And that is what my presentation is about today. Next slide. So this is a quote. I was in a meeting with an exec at Diageo who used to run the Reserve brand, so all of their sort of luxury brands in the US, in North America. And he had made the comment, I always look for opportunities where we can use our size to our advantage. We look at companies like a Diageo, like Bacardi, like Pernod, and we say, oh, they're so big, they have so many resources, they can do anything. They know this is not the case. They know that they can use their size as an advantage, but they also know that they're not nimble. It's really hard for them to A/B test different versions of a product, for example, get feedback and then change it, because they have all of these partners and distributors who would have a real big issue if you launch one thing with them and then change your mind. Little brands can do that though, and that's what I'm going to talk about in the presentation. Next slide, please. At a business, at the size of a business like mine, like anyone on this panel as well, the strengths of the business are truly the strengths of the founder. And this is something that we are all building up in the culture around our business as well, right? So as I really started thinking about this critically, like what do I have that other people in my position may not have, and what can I really, really lean into and leverage? These were the three big ones. Industry expertise and a deep understanding of the problem. I worked in bars and restaurants for 17 years before working with brands. 13 of those years were bartending. I've taught over 5,000 students how to make cocktails, and I'm talking consumers, not even any of the trade. As I mentioned, I was a brand ambassador, a consultant. And so what I think I built in that time was an understanding of the consumer problem and an understanding of the business dynamics and the market and the opportunity in the market. Secondarily, grit is absolutely essential to running a small business or a business of any kind. And creative problem solving is also non-negotiable. I actually think that an over-resourced small business is probably worse off than an under-resourced business, because constraints build creativity. And this is something that, again, all of us can leverage if you see it as an opportunity rather than an obstacle that's in your way. And then finally, the lean startup mentality. We all make consumable products, and so we need to ensure that it's safe to consume and that the product isn't going to spoil in transit and things of that nature. But you really need to start getting feedback, not just on the product, but also on the brand, the positioning, the value prop, the packaging, how you're communicating about your brand to distribution. You need to get that feedback as soon as you possibly can. So you've got to be super fast and nimble. Next slide, please. basically the balance of my presentation is a series of photos. I like pictures, so it's basically photos of my experience along the way that I think are highlighting these strengths that I've talked about. So as I mentioned, I bartended for 13 years before I taught a single person how to make a drink. Then I started teaching cocktail classes at Astor Center in New York City, a couple of these photos from that. Then I said, hey, I don't think anyone's really teaching to consumers. I'm so interested, like, how do you get good at this? So I started expanding and expanding. This is one photo from Audrey Claire Cook in Philly, which is like this chef demo kitchen. One of these is from Haven's Kitchen. So I started getting experience, getting in the reps, teaching students in all of these different contexts. And based on that, that's one of the areas that I got my insight for Cheeky of consumers love cocktails. They want to be empowered to make them, but they feel overwhelmed and they don't want to do the freaking work, to be honest. And we don't, like,
I think April's frozen. I can see Dino moving.
He's
okay on my end. Okay.
Okay, great. Next slide, please. Sorry, next slide. I don't know. Oh, there, sorry, excuse me, here we are. All right, so another area of my background that I have leveraged into what I do today, and again, I know every other founder here does as well, is public speaking, media opportunities. You know, I was a very shy person for the majority of my life, and then I got better at this bartending, talking to people. Then I got better at it, having experiences, again, being in media and speaking in front of people, teaching cocktail classes. From far left, super quick, this is actually how I met Lauren. She and I were both selected as iconoclasts for the Grey Goose Sundance Channel program. This is back in 2010. This is the first time I was filmed for anything and learned how to do this, I think, the hard way, and I regret not doing it better, but that's okay. This is from the Today Show with Tamron Hall. I was just amazing opportunity that I had. The next one is me hosting Bacardi Legacy in New York many years ago. And then this next one was one of the several times I was on Fox and Friends talking about cocktails. And again, all these experiences have enabled me to speak more comfortably in front of people, and also just given me the confidence to do a lot of videos for the business itself. Next slide, please. This is a lot less sexy than just representing your brand. But, you know, as bartenders, we're like, oh, I know everything there's to know about cocktails. But guess what? I didn't know. I didn't know how to manufacture a product. I didn't know what had to go into food safety. I didn't know how to get, you know, early traction or visibility for my brand. I've since become, okay with the Adobe Creative Suite, but I had no idea how to design anything. And now I do a lot of the design for the brand. And so these are just little moments from those times of showing our progress. I think to really hammer home that what you saw earlier with my like cute picture of the Cheeky products, and if you go to our website, it did not start out this way. This has been years in the making. Next slide, please. Great. This is us, again, getting a little bit better at this. This is the first version of my brand, which was called Swig and Swallow. It was a totally different format. First, the two images on the right, we pitched a Shark Tank a bunch of years in a row, made it pretty far in the process. 1 year, great experience honing your pitch. This is me pitching on the Pitch podcast years ago, first time pitching to venture capitalists and angel investors and learning about like what makes a great pitch. Next slide. This is, again, trying to be really lean, conserve cash, and get as far as you possibly can. From the left, you absolutely should use and abuse your friends. Free help is great help. This is our friend Joe Pereira, who came by to help us with production many, many years ago and was such a great sport about it. These two center things, these are still part of my prototyping process today. I do all of the first versions of our designs. I sometimes do the design all the way through the end. And again, I've taught myself that in the process. I do all of our R&D. So this is a bunch of different versions of the espresso syrup that I made with different ratios of gum arabic and cane sugar and different concentrations of the cold brew concentrate that we use. And now, again, it's one of our top selling SKUs, and literally, again, with just the versions that I made. And then this is a more recent photo of one of our warehousing spaces. This is when I was building up a big internal team. Now we're outsourcing a lot more of it, but this was a necessary piece along the way. Next slide. These are just a few things that it's enabled. Feature in the New York Times as one of the craft cocktail mixers that's kind of changing the mixer game. Great partnership with Diageo. and Don Julio, products that went out into distribution. Uber Eats, this is just a recent highlight. They purchased a bunch of our products to promote their alcohol delivery in a bunch of key markets around the US. And then us just getting a little bit better at presenting ourselves over here on the right. And then next slide. And all of this is to say that I believe truly that luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. I know that, again, every single person watching this has their own thing that they like, that they're good at, and then they can build their skills in. And so I think if you're willing to put in the reps and if you're willing to put in the work, you too can follow your dream and build a business of your own. So that's all I have. Lauren, back to you. Thanks so much. This is how to find me. Really appreciate your time, everyone.
It's amazing, April. A great way to kick off the session, and I appreciate you showing the Grey Goose iconoclast thing. It was one of the weirdest videos that I did as well, and I'm hoping nobody ever finds it on YouTube. Hint.
Go search for it.
Don't search for it. So from knowing thy strength over to stats, facts, and geekiness, we're going to head over to Dino Moncrief, who is actually probably the greatest person I know on this exact topic. So a paramount person to involve in this program.
Thank you very much. Hello, my name is Dino Moncrief. I'm going to talk to you. I quite enjoyed coming up with a title for this: Stats, Facts, and Selective Geekiness. This is all about, I guess, throughout my career, I've been really lucky to travel the world and work for some of the most influential hospitality venues, visiting some of the most influential hospitality venues, as well as working for some of the biggest drinks companies in the world. And like that combination of traveling everywhere and meeting a load of people, it really does help shape your future quite dramatically when you think about creating your own brand. One of the things that happens when you work for a big company is that you have an abundance, and I mean an abundance of information just thrown at you, stats everywhere, you know, this, and sometimes you can feel like, we'll talk about this a little bit more, but you can feel like slightly overwhelmed with all the information that you have. But the one thing here is that it is good information, right? That's why the big companies are sharing it with you. So you have to be very, very, very selective with that. So a little bit about myself. So I'm a founder of a multi-award-winning cocktail bar, which is called Atcha, and a multi-award-winning RTD, which is called the Mirror Margarita. So could I have the next slide, please? Thank you very much. So this is Atcha, and I'm going to just to caveat this, I'm not going to mention a lot of stats all the way through this, because you might just kind of get turned off by that, but I'm going to tell you a few things that actually really helped to shape my business. One of the things that really helped, actually, if you have a look at the image on the bottom right hand side there, this is my venue, Atcha, and the image in the bottom has numbers 1 to 25. Now, I basically came up with an idea from doing research and speaking to a lot of bartenders. And it's really interesting to know that most bars that have over 50 different types of spirits behind the back bar, only 15% of those spirits are used on a regular basis. Okay, so for me, that was like, well, wow, you know, one of the most typical things that you find in a mezcal bar or tequila bar is this huge array, which I think is fantastic. But for me, I was obviously very price sensitive because it was my first business. So I wanted to make sure that I didn't have too much holding stock that was just sitting there doing nothing. So I had this list of 25 rotating spirits. My rationale behind that was thinking, I'm sure if you have 25 spirits and then you rotate them, you'll probably end up within a 12-month period selling quite a lot of different spirits, and it will be a different experience for your guests every time that they arrive. So with that in mind, that's what I did. And I then also used another bit of research. So there was a global bit of research that was carried out in 2019, which is when we launched Atcha. And that research to me was so key. So the majority of consumers that actually drink tequila and mezcal, 80% of them enjoy the ritual of having something alongside it. So for me, I was like, okay, well, this is another opportunity here. So you can see the image above the numbers 1 to 25. I was like, let's have some fun with this. Okay. So, you know, I was serving mezcal with goat cheese and reposado tequilas with peanut M&Ms and añejo tequilas with pineapples that have been soaked in rum. So all of this made it a really nice experience, and it was very disruptive and something completely different for our guests. And I think that was one of the key things for me when creating Atcha. So 2 bits of key information that helped me along the way. And you can see in the middle here, there's a photo of me looking very pleased with myself with my award-winning drink, the Mirror Margarita. Which Lauren, could you just go to the next slide for me, please? So one of the key things with Mirror Margarita was just to create something that was very disruptive. When this was launched, again, this was launched at the same time as opening Atcha, and to have a signature serve that was really disruptive, that would draw people back to the venue, was something that I was really concerned and really thought long and hard about. How do you make this different? How do you make a cocktail different? Well, at the time when I was creating this, and by the way, I can tell you, this is without doubt the clearest, most delicious margarita that you will ever have in your life. So just to put that in there. So when when I started creating it, I was thinking I need to do this in a completely different way. So I'm going to use the DNA of the actual agave plant itself to create my cocktail. So I stripped everything back. Margarita, you know, you've only got your 3 key ingredients. So I was thinking, how do I extract the absolute maximum from those 3 ingredients? So the geekiness came in here with researching all about the agave plant and realizing that one of the key components in the agave plant is a naturally occurring malic acid, which occurs during the nighttime in the plant's life cycle. Now, this is a natural sour that you'll find in various other fruits. Think of grapes is a perfect example, rhubarb as well, apples. So you'll find that there. And for me, it was like, wow, this is a moment here. So if I can just create my own sour mix using malic acid, I can always be as true as possible to the plant itself, and help bring out that actual sourness that is naturally there. And believe me, I tried so many different components of sours and etc. It took about 4.5 months to create the perfect combination. And that's what I did when I created the Mirror Margarita, was really used the DNA of the plant to be the real thing that focused me to creating something very disruptive. And there's a tequila version and a mezcal version of this wonderful cocktail, which you must come to London and try in Atcha. So on to the next slide, please. But you're going to say something, Lauren. Were you going to say it is the most delicious cocktail that you've ever tried, ever?
Dino, I was going to say, this is like your perfect 10-minute platform to just really talk broadly about the things that are important to you, like the Mirror Margarita.
Yeah, like the Mirror Margarita. Well, one of the things is actually on this slide is all about just shout. Don't be afraid to shout about what you're good at, right? You know, so this is what it's, when you have a small brand, you really do have to shout about it. And it's really important that you build your brand. If I was going to say, if you have the budget, I'm going to reframe that: make the budget, find the budget to have a great PR to help push your brand, because there's only so much you can do as a founder. And you will find that if you're running around doing everything, sometimes things get lost. And for me, I wanted to really shout about what I was doing, and the accolades soon started coming in. You know, Mirror Margarita has been voted the best cocktail in London, the best cocktail in the UK, the 7th best cocktail in the world. All of that would not have been possible without an amazing PR team. So we worked on a strategy together. And one piece of advice that I would always give you is, if you're building your brand, make sure you have something to shout about every couple of months, so that you can keep your brand front and center, and make sure that people are thinking, oh my God, that's such a big brand. When really it's just me and my wonderful partner scribbling around in the background going, can we do this? So, you know, that is what really helped to put us on the map. And then obviously, as you grow, you recruit more people and you help to tell your story in a different way. Next slide, please. So this is what it can feel like, right? This is like, oh my God, there's so much information. What do I do with all of this? Now, does anyone remember like flavor maps, how important flavor maps were? A couple of years ago, I was working on some flavor maps, and I had 300 different tequilas to try and put into a flavor map. And my goodness, I literally was getting myself so confused. I was like, yeah, but that one, I don't know if I agree with that, and that tastes like that, and this. And this is what I mean about so much information, right? Ultimately, you've got to try and decide on what is important to your consumer, to your customer, and to your team that you're helping to sell your product, right? So you strip away all of that, all of the information that's coming at you, and strip it down to the bare essentials. And one thing, again, another key bit of research that was done, actually, this was done back in about 2020, actually. It was a global bit of research that said that most consumers and customers, they actually, the way that our brains work, we work in threes. We like things in threes. Okay, so, and that's not to say that you can't have a lot of information, but you need to have a pattern of how you're selling it to and sharing it with your customers. Because if you have, like, you know, 6 or 7 different pieces of information, and I'm sure that we've all been there where we've been doing like masterclasses or consumer sessions, too much information, it gets completely lost. But if you can work in threes, that always does really help. So on to the next slide. I'm conscious of the time. I think I'm doing okay. This is good. I'm winning. So right, this looks a really wordy, numbers heavy slide, specifically because I wanted it to look that way. But I'm not going to read everything out to you. What I wanted to just highlight here is everything that you see on this one page is what I used to create both of my businesses. Mira Margarita was obviously a signature serve within Atcha, but it became so successful in its own right that it's now a separate brand. So the two brands work completely independently. They're two separate businesses. But all of everything that I did to create that, both of those brands, is on this page. And that's, and you know, I've been working in the industry for 20 years, so there's quite a lot more information that I could have put on multiple slides, but I just thought, you know, this is actually how important it is to condense everything down. Don't get too blown away with everything that's on there. What really does make a big difference as well is actually speaking to people like us, right? Testimonials are just as important as numbers and stats and data. When you get testimonials from people like ourselves on the panel who are also trying to, you know, build our brands, that's when you get a few more bits of key insight that help. On to the next slide, please, Lauren. Okay, so this one here, I specifically used this brand here because maybe you're aware of it, maybe you're not, but big brands can help small brands be bigger brands, right? And by that, what I mean is, if you have, through Atcha and Mira Margarita, we've partnered with very big international brands to help do, you know, events, pop-ups, etc. But the Lost Explorer Mezcal, as an example, has huge momentum at the moment. So they're growing, they're getting bigger, and they're an ambitious brand. So it makes sense for me to partner with them for the Mezcal Mira Margarita version, because they're on a really nice trajectory. And the point of this slide here is that one thing about big brands is they love small brands, right? They love being around cool brands, right? So remember, whatever brand you're creating, your brand is a cool brand, right? Big brands do want to be part of what you're doing. They want to join in the journey. You know, they will help you get bigger. If you can find someone, a brand that you can align with, that will really, really massively help you. Next slide, please. So that is the that's the end. I just want to say a big thank you to Tails, to Lauren, to my wonderful other panelists, and that's me done. Ta-da!
Amazing. That was great, Dino. Thank you so much. Always love your presentations. It's always so insightful. And Dino and I did a presentation 2 years ago at Tails called Business Recovery Europe, which was awesome. So if you want to go back even further to see a bit more of Dino's process, you can see during the big bad pandemic, all the amazing things. Thank you, Dino, for sharing. And I think we are heading back to New York now to Amanda in just a moment, the brilliant and amazing Amanda. If I can get my PDF to respond to my keyboard. There we go. And over to you. I'm going to start your timer.
Okay. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, everybody. And welcome back to New York. I wish I was down there in New Orleans this year, but hopefully the New York spirit of Sipony and myself and this amazing panel of people can be delivered. So this is Sipony. Next slide, please. A quick introduction, and I will try to keep it quick. My name is Amanda Victoria, and I've been in the world of wine and spirits for approximately 17 years. I actually took the time to count recently. I like to put this provocative photo up right in the very beginning of this, because my story today will be about sharing my experiences from big brands to my medium-sized brand today, in how we have committed to sustainability and environmental wellness along the way. So these are bees here on my face. No bees or any animals were hurt in the taking of this photograph, including myself as the human animal there. I was not stung, and all of these were okay. Next slide, please. So a little bit about Sipony, and I'll say, if you haven't heard about Sipony yet in the news, I haven't done my job exactly as I wished for you. To echo in what Dino was saying, we have to be the biggest champion of our small brands. We have to find occasions and instances to hold that megaphone and really shout very loud and make sure that people understand that we're bringing something new and innovative into the world that requires a lot of muscle behind it. Coming from the bigger companies that I worked for, and by the way, those companies were essentially every large supplier, both family owned and publicly traded around the world at some point, whether it was for a full-time spokesperson job that took me around the world and again and again and again, or if it was something more of a consulting gig very early in my career when I was still working behind the bar in New York City. Regardless of those experiences, I've been able to go around the world and have the support and the muscle of these big companies to really shout about the brands that I was working for at the time, the big vodkas of the world, the big whiskeys of the world, etc. So when it comes to launching something small and new, especially in the consumer mindset, it is really important and critical to be able to be out there, be able to speak on behalf of your brand, share your story, and be very transparent. In the case of Sipony and myself, my success personally has been in transparently telling our story to consumers and trade any chance we get. And the proof here is in some of the awards that we've won in the last several months. These are just the most recent awards, which is something I'm very proud of. I remember the fear initially of submitting my new product to some of these award shows where I had myself been a judge on, and I know how critical the scrutiny that goes into a lot of these decisions to award products is. So these were a big deal for us, a very big deal for us. Next slide, please. So Sipony, and to back up into what Sipony is a whiskey spritz in a can on an important environmental mission. Everything that I was inspired by to create Sipony started in working for larger companies, larger suppliers, always in the areas of education and what I like to call the creative fringe of corporate booze, I guess. So the creative places, the places that were by all means dream jobs for me every time that I was assigned one of them. Again, being able to inform my passions through traveling around the world, meeting consumers, learning what customers want directly from the customers, being forward facing as a spokesperson and being able to always learn from people. And my favorite quote is knowing your audience and being able to understand that audience and then using that into the product. So Sipony was inspired by my travels around the world. It was very much inspired by my time in California, living a sunset life. It is a low proof. It plays in a lot of different trends, but we are a whiskey spritz in a can, the very first aged spirit in a can. We're also the very first B Corp certified company in cans, which is really exciting for us. The first B Corp spirit inside of a can. We are a member of 1% for the planet, and everything that we do is within the unique passion of making sure that environmental wellness is at the forefront of our business. Next slide. Now, Sipney approaches environmental wellness in 3 different ways. And I use the words environmental wellness and sustainability somewhat interchangeably, but we do hear a lot of the buzzword of sustainability over and over again. And there is absolutely a call out in greenwashing that happens with a lot of the bigger companies and even some of the companies that are just launching. And I want to make mention to that because it's a very important cause that putting the environment inside of your business plan in some capacity. When we launched Sipney in 2019, I found it irresponsible to create a company that didn't have environmental wellness at the forefront of our business plan. Having worked for these big companies, I saw a lot of waste. We all, I think, on this panel lived through the time of taking straws back and saving turtles' lives and no more straws in cocktails and moving towards compostable and sustainable materials throughout all of our events, from behind the bar to any interaction with consumers. We were trying to limit waste. And that is something that, having grown up basically within the world of spirits, I saw a huge change coming from leaving the 90s, the late 90s, not that I was exactly there, but leaving the late 90s and the vodka and the luxury movement of the 90s, moving into a more sustainable future and ensuring that our passion in this industry, that in the future, our children and the next generation have a planet to stand on to enjoy these cocktails that we love so much. I think that the world of wine does a really good job about talking about terroir and the agricultural elements of business still. In the world of spirits, we have, I think, still plenty of room to grow from, I guess it's from table to, what do we always say? I'm forgetting because I just got an email, apologies, but from table to glass, or from, I'm totally forgetting. What's blank on that?
From the root to the fruit.
Yes, from the root to the fruit. There's so many of them. The point is that we have an opportunity still within the world of spirits to really speak to our agricultural beginnings. And I think tying that agricultural beginning into your business really helps inform a sustainable business plan and path ahead. So Sipney thinks of our sustainability commitment in 3 different ways. And I like to think of it as the real PPP, for any of us in the US that get that joke, but the real PPP. So production, from our start to finish of creating this product, we vet all of our supply chain. We make sure to work with local farmers. My partner, Joey Mintz, he brings in the horticultural nature of this element to our business, which to me was very exciting. I call him an earthman. He always has his hands in the dirt. He's always gardening. He really thinks about gardening to yield food for our family, which is insane, but I think something so necessary that we need to be doing in this day and age. So when it comes to manufacturing and creating a product for commercial scalability, it was important to Joey and also to myself to make sure that we were working with the right partners along the entire supply chain, from the way we ship to the locality of where these partners are, to bringing our emissions down and keeping them under a certain amount. And especially as we scale up and grow, it was incredibly imperative to just be mindful, and a little bit more than mindful, a commitment to our environmental footprint within our production. Next slide, please. And the second P is our partners. So our partners are, I think, a way, specifically, if you are a small business watching this, or you're thinking about creating something and you're watching this, and you're perhaps a little bit overwhelmed, because I certainly was overwhelmed with many different things. And when you're creating a business, sometimes giving back and making sure to commit to the environment can come off as expensive or unrealistic or difficult overall. But a way that we found very early on was to work with partners. We at Sipney are the experts in making the most delicious whiskey spirits in a can, commercially available and scalable to date. That's what we do. I love making cocktails. That's what has fueled my passion for decades. But I know that I am not personally an expert in planet-saving activity, behavior, and only in my commitment with our profits are we experts now. But there are people out there, long story short, nonprofit people that are leading nonprofits all over the country and around the world and dedicating 100% of their time to saving the planet and saving the planet initiatives. And I say that, and I want to emphasize that because Sipony was born out of this question that you can almost run into anybody, at least in the States and at least in New York City, and say, they've heard of saving the bees. Everyone has heard of saving the bees. We wanted to do an actionable response to that question. And it's very basic and straightforward. And I took my specialty in the world of spirits and brought it into the environmental background that Joey brought into the business. And we now also commit 2% of our profits annually to our partners, our nonprofit partners. This woman here is an award-winning environmentalist. Her name is Nicole. She's based in Detroit. She runs a nonprofit called Detroit Hives. She is such perhaps all of my excitement and passion in the world of sustainability and sustainable business. And what she does is she transforms abandoned parking lots in the city of Detroit in very urban areas that are often impoverished, and transforms these abandoned parking lots into apiaries, which are honeybee gardens, to teach children and the next generation and those in the community that are interested in how to tend to these gardens and these bees in order to do something to continue to preserve the bees for generations to come through education. And giving her any of our profit and commitment from Sipony is so, so important to our business. Next slide, please. And I actually skipped a slide. I want to just go back to partners. I'm sorry, Lauren, I'm messy. So the last P, so we had production, partners, and there should be a slide here that I didn't put in, but it's just people and to speak to people. When you think of sustainability within a company, and when you think of a small company that is growing and growing a team, and especially as a startup and an entrepreneur that is looking to create a team that is long lasting and with passion. I think about sustainability from the point of view of my team as well, and making sure that Sipony is the best place to work at because we have that opportunity to do so. Being a small team and being a small company, there are a lot of disadvantages, as you can imagine. A lot of them arise obviously through financial and funding and all of that. And that this presentation is not on that for me. I could give a whole 2 hours on that. But to dedicate your company as you build to sustainability in terms of how your people are also treated from start to finish, from top to bottom, their packages and everything that you can do as a leader in your business, as the leader in your business and the leader and creator of your business. Sustainability is also about people and the people that work with you and the passion that you bring to the company. Next slide. Okay, so this is a lot of words and I won't read this, but essentially one way that you are able to, as a small company, commit to the environment in some way is creating an environmental wellness commitment or document that is something that you can sign off on, you can check in quarterly, you can think of ways that you can uniquely commit different programs and areas of business to becoming a sustainable business. And these are, for example, if anyone is interested, some of the ways that Sipony does that. I mentioned that we are the first B Corp spirit in a can, which is very exciting. That was a 2-year auditing process. Becoming a B Corp company, just checking in, I'm at 13 minutes. I'm wrapping up right now. I'm sorry. A B Corp company was our way of creating something that was long lasting with a third-party endorsement. Next slide, please, Lauren. And please, if you want, take a photo of this. This is a great way to start your business with sustainability at the forefront. A lot of information in this book, Environmental Debt by Amy Larkin. Next slide. And this is a way to keep in touch if you have any questions about passions about the environment. Thank you very much, Lauren. Apologies.
Thanks. No, my goodness. I wish that we had hours and hours. It's our lovely folks at Tails are keeping us to time today, of course. But definitely take screenshots. Well, take screenshots, take down our Instagram handles for the company and for us personally, so you can reach out afterwards. But we will make the whole slideshow available as well. So not to worry if you feel like you've missed anything. Amanda, as eloquent and amazing as always, thank you so much for sharing more of that sustainable business side with Tiffany. And I'm going to head over to Ireland now. I wish I was physically getting on a plane to come see you, Dave, but we're going to hand it over to you to walk us through the journey of your business.
Thanks a million, Lauren. And I wish I'd managed to go first because I've had so many nuggets of information in my head that I'm trying to retain. This is probably going to be all over the place, but we'll give it our best go. So I'm Dave Mulligan. I'm coming to you from here in Dublin. I think I'm proud to say industry veteran at this stage. I'm 25 years hospitality. I made my first cocktails in the last century. I'm that old, but yeah, I've done everything from bars, restaurants, brands, booze, and in the last 10 years, I suppose I've turned into a bit of a serial entrepreneur. And I'm going to go over the question I get asked most by bartenders, by people who work for brands, by people who are looking to get out on their own, is how do I raise the money? So I'm quite an open book. Anybody who knows me will say that. I've nothing to hide, but a disclaimer from this slide. So there's quite a lot of information, a lot of people's names, other companies. I haven't included them on the slides because I'm here to talk about my own business. While I have their blessing, it's not theirs. But yeah, I'm just going to start by taking you through, first of all, top line, the 4 brands we're talking about, and then into each one of them and where we raise the finance and how different types of finance works for me, works for the business, and works for the brand. So next slide there, Lauren. They are my 4 businesses that I have at the minute. I'm an owner of all of them. Bon Puccina on the left was my first, how I met Lauren in Vancouver all those years ago. Bon Puccina is a labor of love, a passion project, has a great history, is only halfway through its lifespan, and it's nearly 10 years old, but it's definitely my first love, something I'm very passionate about. Does anybody, I'm glad this isn't in person actually, because normally when I say, does anybody know what Irish Poaching is at a seminar, nobody puts their hand up. Lauren does, thank you. So we're like the original Irish spirit, Irish moonshine if you want it, but you know, it predates whiskey, 800 years of history. So fantastic subject to talk about, something I'm super passionate about. And then Bar 1661 is my temple to Poaching. So we are based right here in Dublin 7. I moved back from London after a very successful pop-up in Dublin to open a full-time bar. Really proud to say I wanted to come home and be the best cocktail bar in Ireland. We won that award within 9 months. I got a fantastic team around me, but this independent spirit, it shines through that bar. And while I have my own brand, it is not a temple of Bon, it is a temple of Poaching. We sell everybody's. Next up is craft cocktails, which actually started as a pandemic lifeline for Bar 1661, moving into that RTD space. But I'm glad to say, surprise, surprise, the most commercial thing I've ever done is also the most successful. And then the brand new Little and Green, the world's first Poaching RTD. Everything you do at Poaching is a world's first, so nothing to worry about there. But trying to bring some youth and energy and excitement into Poaching, target a younger demographic, and just have people growing up around the spirit before they reach cocktail culture. So Little and Green is actually named after our address as well in Dublin. We're Little Britain and Green Street. So I'm going to go into Bon and just a little bit about that history. The next slide there, Lauren, and just where I raised that finance. So Bon Puccina started in 2012 in London as an idea, and nobody was doing anything with Puccina. Irish whiskey was fairly new. It was a little dusty at the time. The resurgence, I mean, was fairly new. But I just got really excited about this history of Puccina and how I thought it was a blank slate and something I could really drive the category. So it started self-finance. But very quickly, I realized not only did I have enough money to launch a brand, I didn't have the skill set. I didn't have the know-how. You know, I was a good bar manager, restaurant manager, but I didn't know this brand world. So I partnered up with a friend of mine called Cara, who had a big marketing background. We both invested in the brand, split the equity, and we went at it ourselves. And then very luckily, timing is everything. About a week after we launched, we met with Diageo and Distill Ventures in year 1 of Distill Ventures. We managed to get through, I think there was 180 brands. We managed to get 1 of 4 places and got invested by Diageo. So got thrown into this corporate world that I'd never been a part of and never will be again outside of my own. But no, it's not for me. And I think a lot of bartenders got to know that before they get into it. It's not for everybody. I'm not a 9-to-5 guy. I struggle with chains of commands and the speed the corporates work at is not always great. That being said, Distilled Ventures for me, I have not a bad word to say. The education that came with it, The networking was so fantastic, and to get Puccin being talked about at the top table was just a huge success. But we exited Distill Ventures on good terms, and it came quite clear that there wasn't enough money in this brand to keep two founders happy. So we decided one was going to leave, and I bought Cara out on good terms again. But I raised that money, and I realized by spending that money that I'd raised, that was friends and family, you know, the first place you always go. I didn't have enough money to keep this brand ticking over, and it was such a part of me that I ended up partnering with Ecklandville Distillery, who are my production partners. I actually sold them all my assets, everything we own, bottles, boxes, corks, the lot, and I now just have a royalty brand. So every bottle that sells, that little royalty in the middle, that is what we use for marketing, for travel, for activations, everything. And if you're looking for Bawn online, it's having a little bit of downtime at the minute, because we used to be Notorious Irish Spirit, and then Conor McGregor came out and stole the word notorious for any Irish person. So we were 10 years ahead of it, but say that be. All right, so that's Bawn, how I got the finance. A really, really great structure I have now in that the production partners, they bankroll it, and it's up to me to activate it. I bring a lot more to them. Sorry, I bring the same as they bring to me. You know, I help them get into the on-trade, help them with cocktail culture and just how the industry works. Next slide there, Lauren. I'm going to talk about Bar 1661, my team there, which I could do nothing without. We're always growing, so there's plenty more. But this was a different one. I'd had a successful pop-up in Ireland, and I needed money, you know, and somebody actually came to me, and it was one of the other Puccin producers, a guy called John Ralph, who has a very successful company in Intrepid Spirits, and he expressed an interest in his company, Intrepid Spirits, investing in a permanent bar, and it didn't feel right to me. I said, you know, I want this bar to be independent. I don't want any spirits deals, and if you partner with a company, you're just a flagship for them, you know. So John said he'd go at it himself. He believes what I believe in Puccin. He sees the opportunity. And then because both of us had been out of Ireland, we're both Dublin natives, but we've both been out of Ireland for a decade. John's based in LA now, but we needed to strengthen our ties here. So we partnered up with a gentleman called Shane Long, who massive successful craft beer, Irish craft beer career, serial investor, serial entrepreneur, is involved in a lot of bars. We approached him with the project with very concise, clear, digestible plans, and he jumped at it, you know. So what that gave us was, it gave us the network back at home. Suddenly the big brands and all the important people, not just the sales rep, the extra tier up, they wanted to talk to us, they wanted to see us. So it opened a lot of doors. The last thing there was Bar 1661. I started it, and you always want to retain that control. Over 50 is that magic number. But I actually brought in my sister, who's also in the drinks game down in Mexico. And so the family control it, but you know, everybody's got a nice piece of the pie, and it works for absolutely everybody. So that's private money, you know, it's not VCs, they're just investors, angel investors, they're around, but bringing some credibility to the table that they can open a lot of doors in the drinks industry is a must for me. Next slide there, Lauren. So on to craft cocktails. I'm actually standing in craft cocktails now. And sorry, I'm just checking my timer because I'm a rambler at best. But yeah, I spent 10 years trying to become an ambassador for the Puccin category. And because of the pandemic, I'm now Paddy Porn Star in Ireland. That's what I do. We sell a lot of porn stars, but we did a very, very commercial brand, and huge success. Again, allowed us to double our team, massive activations. We won Best Irish Drinks Brand. But where did the money for this one come from? Well, I think it was the same in the States. At the start of the pandemic, the banks were going wild. They were dishing it out left, right, and center because the government was backing it up, you know. So I got a 6-figure loan, bang on, 100K off the banks, and they gave it to, you know, forget your personal finances. If your business is in good shape, they'll give it to you. Definitely, if the government's underwriting it, they will. But my investors in the bar, you know, John and Shane, they said, are you sure you want to do this? And my opinion was I'd spent 8 years trying to get to where I was. If I was going down, I'm taking everybody with me. Everybody's coming down. So I just said, look, we're going to sink or swim, and let's go for it. Let's do it right. And hey, it worked. And, you know, the amazing thing about bank finance is they don't bother you as long as those repayments are coming in. You can top up a loan as long as you're honoring it. It is a really nice source of finance. Don't put your house against it. Don't put any of your other businesses against it. But if your cash flow is right and the banks are willing to talk to you, it's really great for that growth stage that nobody has to dilute. Everybody's happy. One thing I did do with craft, or two things, I kept the equity shareholding the same as the bar, because that was not the time to be muscling and trying to get more for yourself. It was a survival project, and I had to support the people who had backed me at the start. one thing I did insist on with my investors, I had some serious key staff who answered the call and came back to help me start this. So we got a 10% equity pool to be distributed amongst those key staff, something that I wasn't taking no for an answer, nor did I get any pushback from. Next slide, that was the banks. We all love the banks when they love you. This next one, guys, this is little and green, okay? You can see this slide is just to show you, we want to go big with this one. And this was one, it was my baby again, it was my idea, and I worked with my designers bringing the concept to life. But I went back to John Ralph, but to his company this time, you know, and he makes a Pochian brand. I said, look, we're going to do 3 flavors. We've 2 coming out next week. Bawn can have 1. Mad March Hair, which is his brand, can take the other 2. I don't mind if you guys want to bankroll this thing. It wasn't just about money. It was about 50-state distribution. It was about a footprint in Asia, footprint in the UK. You know, Intrepid Spirits, what John has done is way bigger than anything I've done. I don't have the infrastructure, nor was I connected in the world he was. I have a much smaller piece of what I believe is a very bigger pie. The big positive for that, for me, obviously, apart from just getting the thing off the ground and being able to go quick, was I don't have an email account and I don't get the Instagram account, which I'm sure anyone on this call is delighted. The less Instagram accounts you have, the easier life will be. So yeah, I sit in the background, I sit in on the meetings, and it definitely was born out of me, but I'm really happy to see a bigger company take this one on and roll me out and use me in that ambassador field whenever they need to do. So I think I managed to catch up there. I raced through those last ones. Just that next slide, guys. I can't say this enough. Like, finance is cheap. There's too much money in the world. There's money everywhere. Relationships are not. People take money in too quick from people. I see it all the time, and they fall out. You know, they have it doesn't work for everybody. I'm not going to take money off some mechanic, I'm looking at a car there, is why I said mechanic, sorry, but you know, someone from the rag trade, something. I'm just not going to do that. It needs to be drinks, and it needs to be my world, so we can talk on a level playing field. But if you take money from somebody, you are tied, you are joined at the hip. You're obliged to answer their emails, you answer their calls. You're going to spend weekends with them. You're going to do overnights with them. You're going to be in long car journeys with them. You have to get along. So just really choose your money wisely. There's absolutely loads of it, but if they're not somebody you want to hang out with, then maybe don't go into business with them. That's my handle at the end. If anybody ever wants any more information on that, and yeah, get your pitches right, guys. Something I've become really good at over the years is do your homework, do your behind the scenes. Dino said get a good PR. Mine is get a good strategy, get a good designer to build your decks and go for it. Yeah.
Legendary. Dave, you were really good. You're only 2 minutes and 20 seconds over, which is impressive for you, and we're still generally on time.
Yeah, I'm going to mute it so I don't wreck it now.
Okay. Amazing. And then last but not least, I'm going to zip through my slides very quickly. So for those that I haven't met before in the audience, my name is Lauren Moat. I've been in the drinks industry for over 22 years now. My first drinks that I made was indeed last millennium. So I'm dating myself a little bit here. But as you can see from my back bar, I've got lots of bitters, and I also have lots of brands because I have always worked with them simultaneously throughout my career. And the brand that is celebrating a 10-year anniversary this year is Bittered Sling. And bitters, as you well know, is not only niche, but it's also the slowest moving inventory in any bar. So therefore, but it's being so honest about what each of our brands are as well. And I think all of us together on this call should probably go into business in some way, shape or form in the future. So what is the strategy? So for me, staying on strategy and defining the journey on how to get there has been, I think, probably the hallmark of everything that I've done in business in the last 20 years. I think everyone on this panel would agree with me that it's there's almost this serial entrepreneurial attitude that you either have or you don't. And it's a very difficult thing to learn how to be an entrepreneur, because I think you have this piece in you that really, like whether it's Dave talking about, the chains of command are sort of a weird thing. You sort of want to be in command, or Dino having these big ideas to go on and do, where he sees opportunity. April, where there's a big opportunity in the market that she can hone in on. And of course, Amanda with like a love for the environment and different things. It's developing your strategy. It takes a long time to get there, and it involves all manner of things, how you define your brand, your voice, the iconography, the logo, how you present yourself, the tone of voice, how you run your Instagram account, what are the objectives, who are the stakeholders, where is the money coming from to bring it to life. So it's a combination of so many different things. And for me, it's about how we define the brand. And on Bittered Sling, I was really lucky in 2008 to start developing bitters as part of a bar program. So I had a 4-year period of doing trial and error as it was incorporated into different bar programs I was running. And then in 2010, I met Jonathan, my husband. In 2012, we launched Bittered Sling, so 10 years ago. But then Jonathan was still cooking at the time, and we didn't have enough money to keep it going. And so I decided to start taking consulting roles at the same time, which led me into doing business with big corporations like the Four Seasons, and then also running the small bars that I was doing at the same time while doing Bittered Sling. But I also started working for the bigger corporations too as a consultant, because my specialty was about flavor. My specialty was storytelling, and my specialty was about developing trade advocacy at the service of the bartender, always at the heart of the conversation, to develop that creative hook that can really bring the guest into our bartending world. So how did we define our brand? We are an award-winning bitters focused on spring water, whole botanicals, and non-GMO, high-quality Canadian spirit. It's very, very simple. And our intention is about correcting the imbalance in drinks one dash at a time. And our mission has always been to create a powerful lineup of cocktail bitters that inspire creativity and celebrate bartenders. And I think after working with big businesses for over a decade, what I learned the most is that whatever the strategy is, having the ability to hone in, develop it, you can go off in different directions, but you always have to come back. But the strategy is a living, breathing document and a living, breathing thing that is flexible, because you also have to be flexible. The core message on your brand is what continues to give it brand equity and continues to build it out over time, but you have to keep coming back to the strategy or the document that really grounds you. So for us, doing the right thing really matters. And it's a combination of all of those things that you see on the screen. And that's when it comes to people, when it comes to supply chain, when it comes to who we do business with. And even for me, working as a consultant, it's about who I choose to do business with. Everything has to feel cohesive and consistent, so that when we wake up in the morning as entrepreneurs, it definitely can be a grind. It's always challenging. You're always working 24/7 when you own your own business. And so it's really important that you can feel connected to the trust, the reliability, the integrity. It's really like your core values and your mission that keep you going in that same direction. And this is a little bit of a glimpse of Bittered Sling, our strategy. So yes, it was always about bitters, but bitters always played like a very small role of what our business idea always was. And it was about celebrating bartenders, celebrating flavor, and how we bring consumers into our world. And our strategy has always been flexible. On the left, you see, like, there are from tos on every single strategy document. You could download a template and there would be a from to. But what I love about this is we went from a pop-up restaurant where Jonathan was cooking. We had bartenders that we would invite in. It was mandatory they had to use Bittered Sling, but they could use anything else that they wanted to bring to life this food and beverage experience for the guests. The guests were involved by grading and assigning a value to each of the pairings to bring it to life. And so Bittered Sling really established itself as a food and beverage experience company. And bitters was, again, the small thing that we made as the marketable retail item that would be ubiquitous in cocktails. And then on the right, we have where we are now with our, it's probably a little long, 75-page strategy document that continues to evolve and change as we have new insights, as we grow into new markets, as we discover that our bottle supplier has stopped producing the specific glass that we need. So whatever it is, it's always a living, breathing document, but it really keeps us grounded. I wrote pop-up restaurant to global portfolio over 10 years, and global to us does not mean every single country on planet Earth. It means the markets where the bartenders are really excited to be able to get a hold of a product like this, and it doesn't necessarily require mass distribution, it requires access. So we have managed to work with smaller companies that are just like ours to be able to provide, I guess, the inventory, the strategy, a flexible strategy that they could operate locally. But it's more or less like these great bartenders that have opened small shops either during the pandemic or prior that are working Bittered Sling into what their ethos is for their company. And we love that. And it helps to inform our strategy at the end of the day, again, coming back to celebrating bartenders. Now, here's some really great photos. The one on the top left, Jonathan and I dressed up for a photo shoot on the cover of BC Business. The title of the document was called How We Did It. It was Jonathan and I on a baseball field talking about the perfect pitch. I was wearing heels, he was not. It's a very awkward photo, but I love it. It's like sort of taking the piss out of us in a way that we're not so serious. We are bartenders, a bartender and chef team that had no investment outside my mother's 1%, $5,000 investment when we were so broke. And she said, will you ever pay me back? I said, no, but we'll give you 1% of the company. That was like 8 years ago. Next to that is when we used to make bitters in these giant blue food safe totes with our distillery partner, Okanagan Spirits, really showing that real people are behind the brand, making the product, and we did stir it with a food safe kayak paddle. Next to that, we have one of our distributors in Italy who is celebrating with Bittered Sling in the office, which was so cool because we found, and part of that strategy building was not just to engage outwardly, but inwardly as well, to make sure that our internal teams, whether they were doing finance, they were doing HR, or the distributor partners, going to the office, celebrating, making drinks, and making sure that Bittered Sling was more than just a product that sat on a shelf, but it was something you picked up and used, and it was connected to an incredible feeling of community and flavor every time you used it. And on the right there, that was during the pandemic. I'm sure everyone's got several pictures like this filed away that help us to remind of what it was at one point, but help to reprioritize our thinking. On the bottom right and the bottom left, these are, part of our competitive advantage as well. When we talk about like all of the things that we do on a day-to-day business that makes us different, we don't necessarily set out, to be honest, just to be different. We set out to do the best that we want to do, that is a representation of who we are. Jonathan and I are committed to exceptional ingredients. We used to peel all the fresh citrus by hand, but you can see on the right, it was a landscape photo, so that's not even a portion of how much citrus is reflected in that photo. And then on the left, we have our cacao that we source from a company called East Van Roasters in Vancouver, that is a social enterprise that works with women that have been victims of domestic violence. They come and work at East Van Roasters as a way of integrating back into the community. And we know exactly the latitude and longitude of where this cacao comes from a small farm, one of our suppliers in Madagascar. We know that part of what separates us from the rest is our story, and our story is reflected in our strategy. And next to that, you can see a lot of orders. There's a lot of bitters there, and we just don't have to say more than that. So next, we change the game because it's what makes us different. I will harp on and on and on about what it takes, to really invest in bartenders, and that has been, probably the paramount thing that I've focused on over the last 10 years working for corporate companies as usually a very important part of trade advocacy, working on lots of different brands. I only worked on brands that had an investment in trade advocacy, and I wouldn't work on a brand that didn't have it. I invested in, lots of time in developing programs, creating accessibility for emerging markets, for underrepresented groups was really important. Women was a big one, and then it gradually transformed into lots of other people and faces and beautiful humans around the world that really should have had the spotlight much earlier. You can see a lot of our core, who we call our bitter babes. Our bitter babes are what a normal company would call an ambassador, but for us, we do not require a bartender's full-time commitment to our company in order to be part of what we do. Bitter Babes it's an inclusive group of individuals around the world that really care deeply about the same things that we care about, the same intrinsic core values, from flavor to celebrating greatness in our industry, to development and education, and also bringing the guest from outside the bar into our world so they can participate as well. Now, real people hustling. I mean, everybody on this panel will definitely feel the same about this. Real people hustling. Don't believe what you see on Instagram that has been adjusted by the Airbrush app, which I use all the time, and I'm not afraid to say that. I'm 40 years old, and I'm just owning that. But what we're creating is brand equity, the value, the quality, and positive associations with our brand. People should really feel like there's a familiarity in our process that is a representation of what they too are going through, whether a person at home making drinks, wanting to make drinks, or for bartenders or other brands. And social media is not the whole truth. I'm making bitters in the top one there after peeling what can only be described as millions and millions of tiny little citrus fruit. And Jonathan on the bottom, when we physically had to take every single e-com order that came in, even if it was 120 ml bottle, we'd still have to package it up ourselves and take it to the post office and then share the track. It was like a whole thing. When you manage your own Shopify account, that's when you understand real craziness. And how's it going now? I'm just going to zip through the last few slides, and you can definitely take a screenshot, come back to this, but how do we get from A to B? Everything that you see as a sort of a colorful moment on the map there is a place where you can get a bottle of Bitter Sling bitters. It may not have widespread distribution, but to be honest, we've been part of large companies that have had a large portfolio, and we thought, won't this be amazing? We'll be available everywhere. But the truth is, they still have to figure out how to allocate funding to sell you. And so the biggest learning that I had as part of building our strategy as well is who's going to pay for all of this. So we wanted to make sure that everything that we built into our strategy and part of our toolbox was something that we could either fund independently or something that we could partner with another brand, because Bitter Sling is a non-conflict brand. It's not a spirit, it is a slow moving modifier. So we generally can work with all brands. And so most big brands are actually idea poor, and they hire lots of agencies to develop different ideas and creative strategy for them. And what we've done is actually presented them with the ideas and how Bitter Sling can bring them to life. And that has been a critical part of our toolbox. Now, last few slides here, collaboration across teams and industry. This just shows you some of the brands and people that we've partnered with in the past, where we have brought incredible programs to life that have really helped to cement Bitter Sling as not just a bitters brand, but actually as just a critical part of our drinks industry, as a brand you probably want to work with, because there are great people doing great things behind the brand that elevate other people. This is our team. You can see the Bitter Babes there on the bottom. They all have full-time bar jobs, and we just ask that they contribute whatever time they have. And there's my mom, her 1% Canadian directorship, because she lent us that money that time. These aha moments, I'm going to leave them on the screen. Please take a screenshot. These are some of the things that help to inform how we built our company over the last 10 years, and where we're so proud and happy to go for the future. And it's always a learning journey. Anything we didn't understand how to do, we faked it while we figured it out in the background, or we relied on great consultants and friends that would give us that free advice to help us along into the future. And then in summary, Amanda and we talked about this for a long time, about my MBA by osmosis taught me how to build a strategy that is unique to Bitter Sling, that covers off everything that we require, as well as the correct pitch to give someone that has lots of money that wants to invest in a tiny little bitters brand from Canada. All right, so we're going to wrap this up. Just remember, I think this is probably true of everybody on this panel. Entrepreneurs are always on. We listen, but we also learn differently. We apply learnings differently, and our success is defined differently. We take what we need and we leave the rest behind. And every single person on this panel today is a direct reflection of what that looks like. And each one of us are very, very different. And had we not gone through a relationship building exercise with big brands, whether we worked with them, for them, or created programs for them, there were incredible, important lessons that we learned to apply to all of our businesses. And I am very grateful for that. And I'm sure everyone else is as well. So I think we're out of time. So I'm going to stop. Okay. everyone, I would love you to come off mute and say a little thank you or a goodbye, because we're definitely out of time.
Thank you,
Yeah, no
everyone.
worries.
Thanks, everyone. All the best from London.
Thank you, Tales of the Cocktail.
Yeah, thank you,
Yes.
Tails. Thank you, audience. Thank you, panelists.
Thank you, everybody, and enjoy your Tails experience, and keep an eye on us, because the entrepreneurs are not just doing a Tails seminar. We are building a comm strategy to sell this seminar. So hopefully you've seen it on social leading up to seeing this at Tails, but do please keep in touch with each of us. I will share very quickly our social media handles again on the screen. There we are. Take a screenshot, come back to us with any questions or comments, and thank you so much to each of you and to Tails the Cocktail for the great opportunity to share our stories.